For 10 years, my life was a ship in a bottle, meticulously arranged, beautiful in its stillness, and completely sealed off from the wind. I called it safety. I called it love. Every day was a perfect, predictable copy of the one before, and I thought that was the goal. I thought that was happiness. Then, one Tuesday evening, the man I built that bottle with came home, picked it up, and smashed it on the floor. And as I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage, the most terrifying thing wasn't the broken glass. It was the sudden, deafening rush of air.
Welcome to Unbroken Women. I'm your host, Susan Bentley. We've all known the comfort of a safe harbor, that place where the waters are calm and predictable. But what happens when that safety becomes a cage? Today we hear the incredible story of Rachel Bennett from Denver, Colorado, a woman who had to lose everything she thought she wanted to finally discover the life she was truly meant to live. This is her story in her words.
Our life was painted in shades of beige. Our walls were a soft, inoffensive taupe. My closet was full of sensible trench coats and comfortable flats. Even our arguments were quiet, polite disagreements over which documentary to watch or who forgot to buy almond milk. Tom was a good man, a steady man. He was an architect, and he designed our life with the same precision he used for his buildings. Clean lines, solid foundations, no surprises. Our mornings smelled of the same single-origin coffee, brewed at exactly 7:15. Our evenings ended with the Sunday crossword puzzle, even on a Wednesday. We were the couple our friends pointed to as the stable ones. We had a 10-year plan that was really just a continuation of the present. We were comfortable. I equated that comfort with contentment. I had convinced myself that the absence of waves meant the ocean was happy. I didn't realize that a stagnant sea is a dead one. I remember looking at other women who traveled alone, who started their own businesses, who made bold, messy choices, and feeling a strange mix of pity and fear for them. Their life seemed so chaotic, so risky. I would retreat into the quiet hum of my own predictable world, feeling smugly secure. I had what everyone was supposed to want. I was safe. The weight I carried wasn't a secret or a sorrow. It was the crushing, invisible burden of fine. Everything was always fine. My job in marketing was fine. Our relationship was fine. My life was fine. But fine was a full-time job. It required constant vigilance. Don't rock the boat. Don't ask for too much. Don't be too loud, too emotional, too anything. Every decision, from what to have for dinner to where to go on our carefully planned, all-inclusive vacations, was filtered through a single question. What is the least disruptive option? I was the curator of our comfort, the guardian of our stillness. My own desires, the ones that felt too big or too inconvenient, were packed away like seasonal clothes, stored in an attic I never visited. I was shrinking millimeter by millimeter to fit into the beautiful, stable life we had built. I didn't even notice I was holding my breath until the day I was finally forced to exhale. The cracks started as whispers, tiny, almost imperceptible moments of dissonance. I'd be driving home from work, watching a summer storm build over the Rockies, the sky bruised purple and black, and I'd feel a pang. It wasn't sadness, it was envy. I envied the raw, untamed energy of it all. Another time, I was scrolling online and saw a photo of a woman, my age, standing alone on a rugged coastline in Iceland, her hair wild in the wind, a look of fierce joy on her face. I felt a jolt, a flicker of a life so alien it might as well have been on another planet. I closed the laptop, my heart beating a little too fast. Tom came into the room and asked what was wrong. "Nothing," I said, the word tasting like dust in my mouth. "Just tired." These moments were fleeting, and I was an expert at pushing them down, at plastering over the cracks. They were just fantasies, I told myself. Daydreams. The price of admission for a stable life was leaving a little bit of your wildness at the door. I had willingly paid it. Or so I thought. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because we were having tacos, like we did every Tuesday. I was chopping cilantro, the familiar, clean scent filling our beige kitchen. Tom came home later than usual. The sound of his keys hitting the ceramic bowl by the door was different. Heavier. Final. He didn't come over to kiss my cheek. He just stood in the doorway. His briefcase still in his hand, his shoulders slumped. The perfect lines of his architect's posture were gone. I asked if he was okay. He looked at me, but his gaze was a million miles away. His hazel eyes, usually so calm and steady, were empty. He finally spoke, and his voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it was the loudest sound I had ever heard. "I can't do this anymore, Rachel." My heart stopped. I thought he meant his job, the stress. I started to offer solutions to fix it, like I always did. "We can take a trip," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy. "Maybe go to that resort in Mexico again." He shook his head slowly. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there terrified me. It was nothing. A void. "It's not the job," he said. "It's this. It's us. I'm just numb. I feel completely numb." Numb. The word hung in the air between us, colder than any winter wind. It wasn't a word of anger or passion or betrayal. It was a word of absence. He told me he was leaving, that he had already packed a bag, that he was staying with his brother. There was no fight, no yelling, just the quiet, devastating precision of a controlled demolition. He was dismantling our life, brick by brick, and I just stood there, holding a knife, surrounded by the scent of cilantro, watching my safe harbor drain away to nothing.
The first few weeks were a blur of denial. I kept the house exactly as he'd left it. His coffee mug sat by the sink. His book was still on the nightstand, face down to mark his page. I told our friends he was on a work trip. I told myself it was a phase, a midlife crisis he'd snap out of. Any day now, he would walk back through the door, apologize for the scare, and our beige world would click back into place. But beneath the denial was a deep, cold, paralyzing fear. It wasn't just the fear of being alone, it was the fear of being untethered. For a decade, every decision had been a we. Now it was just I, and I was a stranger. Standing in the grocery store, I would stare at the wall of pasta sauces for 10 minutes, unable to choose, because I didn't know what I wanted. The world suddenly felt enormous, loud, and full of terrifying choices. Every menu, every street corner, every empty evening was a question I didn't know how to answer. My anxiety had a physical presence. It was a cold knot in my stomach, a tightness in my chest that made it hard to take a full breath. The safety I had so carefully cultivated hadn't prepared me for life, it had insulated me from it. And now the insulation was gone, and I was exposed to the elements, utterly and completely terrified.
The breaking point came a month later, on a Wednesday night, sitting in the blue glow of my laptop screen. I was trying to do something, anything, to prove I could function. I decided to book a solo vacation, Nothing crazy, just a long weekend in Santa Fe. Something manageable. I found a charming little hotel, looked up art galleries, and read reviews for restaurants that serve the best green chili stew. My cursor hovered over the bright orange Book Now button, and I froze. A wave of panic, so intense it felt like drowning, washed over me. What would I do there alone? Who would I talk to? What if I got lost? What if I hated it? The questions spiraled into a hurricane of self-doubt. My vision blurred. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. I slammed the laptop shut, the click echoing in the silent house. And then I broke. I slid from my chair onto the floor and sobbed. It wasn't a gentle, quiet cry. It was a gut-wrenching, animalistic wail of pure despair, torn from the deepest part of my soul. I was crying for Tom, for my lost life, but mostly I was crying for myself, for the woman who was so terrified of the world that she couldn't even click a button to book a 3-day trip. In that moment, on the floor, I felt the full weight of my pathetic, self-imposed prison. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if I didn't do something, I would simply evaporate.
After the tears stopped, there was only a hollow, echoing silence. I pulled myself up and looked at my reflection in the dark screen of the laptop. I saw a ghost. A pale, puffy-eyed woman with fear-haunted eyes. I didn't recognize her, but I hated what she represented. In that moment, a tiny flicker of something other than fear sparked inside me. It was anger. I was angry at my fear, angry at the cage I had built around myself. The decision wasn't a grand epiphany. It was a small, cold, hard promise made to the pathetic woman in the reflection. One thing. I would do one thing every single month that absolutely terrified me. Not something I disliked, but something that made my stomach drop and my palms sweat. It wasn't a plan for happiness or healing. It was a declaration of war against the paralysis. It was a choice to feel something, anything, other than the soul-crushing terror of standing still. It was the most rebellious thought I'd ever had.
The next Saturday, I found myself standing at the entrance to an indoor rock climbing gym. The air inside was thick with the smell of chalk and sweat and something that smelled like rubber and fear. Muscular people with harnesses and confident smiles moved with a grace that felt utterly alien. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to turn and run. The fear was a physical thing, a voice screaming in my head that I was too weak, too old, too clumsy. But the image of that woman on the floor was stronger. I walked to the counter, my voice barely a whisper, and signed up for the beginner's class. The rental shoes pinched my feet. The harness felt awkward and alien. My instructor was a kind, patient college kid who probably thought I was having a midlife crisis. And maybe I was. The first time I put my hands on the wall, the plastic holds felt rough and unforgiving. I climbed 3 feet, looked down, and felt a wave of vertigo. But I kept going. My muscles screamed, my fingers ached, and my mind was a loop of, I can't do this. Then, somehow, my hand closed around the final hold at the top of the easiest beginner wall. I hung there, breathless and shaking, 10 feet off the ground. It wasn't Everest, but looking down at the ground, it felt like I had conquered a world. It was the first victory that was entirely my own.
My new life was met with a chorus of concerned confusion. When I posted a blurry photo of my scraped hands after climbing, my mother called immediately. "Rachel, honey,
What are you doing? This isn't safe. You're gonna get hurt. Her voice was laced with a genuine worry that felt like an anchor. My best friend, meaning well, suggested I try therapy or a book club instead. This just doesn't seem like you, she said. And she was right. It wasn't the me anyone knew. I ran into Tom at a coffee shop one day. He saw me, and for a moment, his face was a mask of disbelief. He'd seen my picture on a mutual friend's feed. He looked at me, at my slightly more toned arms and the new, unfamiliar confidence I was trying to wear, and he said the words that cut the deepest. I don't even know who you are anymore. It was meant to be an accusation, a sign of how far I had strayed from the woman he'd left. But the hardest resistance came from within. Every time I signed up for the next scary thing, a kayaking class on a choppy lake, a public speaking workshop, the inner critic was relentless. It told me I was being foolish, reckless, that I was making a fool of myself. It whispered that Tom was right, that this new person was an imposter, and that the safe, quiet Rachel was the real me, just waiting to take back control. The world wanted me to be the broken woman, the one who grieved quietly and politely. And some days, I wanted to be her too. The comfort of that old pain was seductive. The quiet nights were the hardest battleground. The adrenaline of the day's challenge would fade, leaving behind a profound, aching loneliness. The house was too big, too silent. The empty side of the bed felt like a continent. In those dark hours, I would lie awake and question everything. Was this bravery, or was it just a frantic, pathetic attempt to outrun my grief? I missed the easy comfort of Tom's presence, the shared history, the shorthand of a decade together. I missed the feeling of being known. This new path was so isolating. There was no one to celebrate the small victories with, no one to hold me after a day of feeling terrified and overwhelmed. The temptation to retreat was immense. I'd imagine calling him, imagine saying, "You were right, this is crazy, let's go back to being numb together." The familiar pain seemed so much more manageable than the terrifying uncertainty of forging a new self. It was a daily war, and I was losing as often as I was winning. My near defeat came 3 months in, during my most ambitious challenge, a solo camping trip in the mountains. I had watched dozens of YouTube videos. I had the right gear. I felt prepared. But reality was a cruel teacher. The temperature dropped unexpectedly. A torrential downpour started just as I was fumbling with my tent, which promptly collapsed into a puddle of nylon and despair. I got turned around on what was supposed to be a simple half-mile hike back to my car. By the time I found it, I was soaked to the bone, shivering, and covered in mud. I threw my useless gear in the trunk and sat in the driver's seat, the sound of rain drumming on the roof, the only sound, and I just stared into the darkness, feeling nothing but a profound and bottomless sense of failure. This wasn't brave. This wasn't inspiring. It was pathetic. I was a 38-year-old woman who couldn't even manage one night alone in the woods. The anger from that night on my living room floor was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy hopelessness. I was done. I would go home, sell the gear, and accept my fate as a small, scared person. The world had won. I sat there for what felt like hours, ready to surrender completely. On a whim, my fingers numb with cold, I called my grandmother. She's 92 and has seen everything. I didn't even know what to say. I just started sobbing into the phone, telling her about the rain, the tent, the utter humiliation of it all. I told her I was quitting, that it was all a stupid mistake. I expected her to coo and tell me to come home and have a cup of tea, but she didn't. She listened patiently until my sobs subsided,
And then her voice came through the speaker, clear and steady as a lighthouse beam. "Rachel," she said, "you think you're failing. But a ship in the harbor is safe. But that is not what ships are built for." She paused, and then delivered the words that changed everything. "The biggest risk, my dear, is never taking one at all. You didn't fail. You just got a story to tell." A story to tell. It wasn't a failure. It was a chapter. In that moment, something shifted. The shame began to recede, replaced by a tiny, stubborn spark. I wasn't pathetic. I was learning. Her words were the fuel I needed. The climb back wasn't a sudden ascent. It was a slow, deliberate crawl. I started smaller again, rebuilding my confidence. But this time, it was different. I wasn't just chasing fear. I was chasing joy. I took a cooking class and learned to make complex Thai curries, just for myself. I went to a concert alone and lost myself in the music, unconcerned with who was watching. Then came the big one. I took the money I'd saved for a down payment on a bigger, beigeur house with Tom, and I bought a plane ticket to Portugal, alone. The terror was still there, a low hum beneath the surface, but now it was accompanied by a thrilling current of excitement. I got lost in the winding streets of Lisbon, and instead of panicking, I discovered a tiny bakery with the best pastries I'd ever tasted. I sat by the ocean for hours, just watching the waves, feeling their power and understanding that stillness was not the only form of peace. I started a blog, a simple online journal called The Safe Harbor. I wrote about the collapsed tent, the fear, the small victories. And a strange thing happened. People started reading. Other women. They wrote comments saying, "Me too. I wasn't alone after all." I don't know exactly when the change became permanent, when the new me stopped feeling like a costume. But one day, I looked in the mirror and I didn't see a ghost anymore. I saw a woman with lines around her eyes from squinting into the sun, not from crying. My hair was messy from the wind. My hands, once perfectly manicured, were calloused from rock walls and kayak paddles. I was no longer defined by my relationship status, my quiet house, or my sensible shoes. My identity was forged in collapsed tents, missed flights, and conversations with strangers in foreign languages. I didn't need anyone else to make me feel secure, because I had finally discovered that true safety isn't the absence of risk. It's the knowledge that you have the strength to survive the storm. Sometimes I think of that woman, the one crying on the floor in front of her laptop. I want to reach back through time and tell her, I know you're scared. I know you think that your little ship in a bottle is the only thing keeping you from drowning. But what I know now is that the safe harbor wasn't protecting me. It was just preventing me from discovering the open sea. And the whole, wide, beautiful, terrifying ocean was always waiting.
What an incredible testament to the strength we find when we dare to sail our own waters. Thank you, Rachel Bennett, for sharing your beautiful journey with us here at Unbroken Women. What was your biggest takeaway from Rachel's story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you were inspired today, please like, subscribe, and click here to watch another story of a woman who found her strength in the storm.